The space between stars was always quiet. Ethan Cole liked that quiet. He could hear the low hum of the engines, the faint vibrations through the metal floor of the ship Aelthra's Edge. To him, it was peaceful, a sound that meant everything was working as it should. He was a systems engineer, one of only 3 humans aboard a ship mostly run by Velarans, tall silver-skinned aliens with glowing eyes and calm, distant manners. Ethan had been assigned to the Aelthra's Edge 6 months ago as part of a joint alliance program. The Human Federation wanted to strengthen ties with the Velaran Empire after decades of cold tension. Scientists, officers, and engineers from both sides were exchanged to learn from each other. On paper, it was a step toward peace. In practice, it was uneasy. Humans were emotional and talkative. Velarans were quiet, logical, and preferred to keep their thoughts hidden behind calm expressions. And no one embodied that more than Commander Lysera Valeth. Ethan saw her almost every day on the command deck. She was tall and graceful, her silver skin catching the soft blue light of the consoles. Her uniform was marked with dark blue patterns, symbols of her rank. Her eyes were a deep violet, cold and focused. When she spoke, her voice carried authority, even when she said only a few words. But she almost never spoke to him. The first time Ethan met her, he had tried to be friendly. He'd stood at attention, smiled, and said, "Engineer Ethan Cole, reporting for duty, Commander." She had looked at him briefly, nodded once, and said, "Your station is in Engineering Section 3. Report there." That was all. After that, it was the same every day. Orders, reports, silence. At first, Ethan thought she just didn't like talking much. But as days passed, he noticed she spoke to the Velaran crew normally. Not much, but enough. She even gave faint smiles to her second-in-command, Captain Rellan. To him, though, she gave nothing. Not even a glance unless she had to. Ethan didn't want to make trouble. He respected the chain of command. But something about her silence bothered him. He was used to being part of a team where people talked, joked, shared small moments. Here he felt like a ghost. The Velarans worked in quiet harmony, their motions smooth and precise. He always felt a step behind. One morning he sat at his console running diagnostics on the ship's fusion drive. He liked his work. Machines didn't ignore you. They either worked or didn't. As he watched the energy readouts, a soft voice came through his comm. "Section 3, report your status." He froze for a second. It was Commander Lysera's voice. Calm, clear, distant. Yes, Commander," he said quickly. "Drive output is stable. Plasma flow is within safe range. I'm recalibrating the thermal regulators." There was a pause, just long enough for him to wonder if she'd cut the connection. Then she said, "Understood. Continue." The line went silent again. Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Well, that's something," he muttered to himself. Later that day, he went to the mess hall. The Velaran food machines served bland but healthy meals. Most of the Velarans sat in quiet groups talking softly in their melodic language. The few humans on board sat together. Lieutenant Harper, a pilot, and Dr. Miller, a medic. They waved him over. "How's life in the cold zone?" Harper asked with a grin. Ethan shrugged. "Same as always. I talk, she ignores." Dr. Miller chuckled. "The commander again?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "I get it. She's the boss, she's strict. But it's been months. I think she might actually dislike me." "Velarans aren't like us," Miller said. "They don't show emotions the same way. Maybe she respects you and just doesn't say it." "Or maybe," Harper said, smirking, "she's just allergic to humans." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, maybe that's it." Still, when he went back to his quarters later, he couldn't shake the thought. Why was she like that? Every report said Velarans valued honesty and respect. He had done his job perfectly. He'd fixed their cooling systems, improved their scanner efficiency, even helped them repair damaged drone ships. Yet she barely acknowledged his existence. He sat by the small window looking out at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, cold and beautiful. Somewhere out there, Earth was just a tiny blue dot. He wondered if anyone back home would ever understand what it felt like to be surrounded by aliens and feel more alone than ever. A week passed without much change. The ship was on patrol near the outer border of Velaran space, scanning for pirate activity. The crew followed their routines. Ethan did his checks, submitted reports, and received short acknowledgments. The commander was as distant as ever. But one evening, something strange happened. Ethan was in the maintenance bay, recalibrating the gravity stabilizers. The ship's lighting dimmed slightly, signaling shift change. He heard footsteps, soft, precise. He turned and saw her. Commander Lysera stood near the entrance, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the half-light. "Commander," Ethan said, straightening. "I didn't expect— I was told you made adjustments to the stabilizer flow algorithms," she said, cutting him off gently. "Yes," he replied. The human model was slightly different from the Valaran design. "I merged both systems to reduce vibration." She stepped closer, studying the panel. Her movements were smooth and deliberate. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she said quietly, "You altered a system that has been stable for decades." Ethan hesitated. "Yes, but it improved efficiency by 12%. Her eyes flicked to him. There was no anger, just a long, unreadable look. "Efficiency is not always worth risk," she said softly. "But your method works," he blinked. "You checked it?" She nodded once. Yes. That single word, yes, carried more warmth than he expected. It was the first time she had spoken to him without that distant tone. "Thank you, Commander," he said carefully. She turned to leave but paused at the doorway. "Do not assume silence means disapproval, Engineer Cole. Valarans process differently." And then she was gone. He stood there for a long time after she left, trying to understand what she meant. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying her words in his mind. Maybe he had misread her all this time. Maybe she wasn't ignoring him, just observing, waiting, judging silently. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more behind her calm face than she let anyone see. The next few days, Ethan began to notice small things. When he entered the command deck, her eyes would flick toward him briefly before turning back to her screens. When he reported his updates, she didn't interrupt him anymore. Once, he even caught what looked like a faint smile when he handed her a report early. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress. One evening, during a quiet moment in the control room, the stars shimmered outside the wide viewing glass. The ship was coasting through an asteroid belt, their scanners mapping mineral-rich rocks for future mining. Ethan stood beside the commander's station, monitoring shield frequencies. He noticed the faint reflection of her face in the glass, calm, thoughtful, almost sad. For a second, she seemed less like an untouchable alien officer and more like a person lost in her own thoughts. "Commander," he said softly, "do you ever miss your homeworld?" Her gaze didn't move. "Valara Prime?" she asked. "Yes." She was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "We do not miss as you humans do. But there are places one remembers." Her voice was softer now, less formal. Ethan turned toward her. "I think that's what we call missing something." She didn't reply, but her eyes shifted toward him, curious, almost studying him. Then she looked away again. After that night, the silence between them felt different. Not cold anymore, but full of something unspoken. Still, the rest of the crew noticed nothing. To them, Commander Lysera was still the same disciplined leader, and Ethan was still the quiet human engineer who worked too hard and talked too much. But beneath that, something was changing. Slowly, quietly, like a star forming deep in the dark. Ethan didn't know what it meant yet. He didn't know that the woman who had ignored him for months was already beginning to see him in a way no human could imagine. He only knew that the next time she spoke his name, it felt different. And even though he couldn't explain why, it made his heart beat faster than it ever had in deep space. He didn't know it yet, but the silence that once separated them was about to become something far more complicated. Something that would change both their lives forever. Ethan woke to the sound of the ship's alert system. A low tone echoed through the halls, followed by a calm but firm voice from the intercom. "All stations prepare for potential engagement. Repeat, all stations prepare for potential engagement." He sat up quickly, the blue emergency lights flashing faintly across his room. He pulled on his uniform and ran out, his boots echoing in the metal corridor. The other crew members were already moving fast and silent, their silver faces calm, their long fingers tapping control panels on the walls as they passed. When he reached the engineering section, his partner in maintenance, a Velaran named Sira, was already working on the energy regulators. Her glowing eyes turned toward him briefly. "Pirates," she said simply. Ethan blinked. "Pirates? Out here?"
"Yes," she said.
Long-range scanners detected 6 ships. Small, fast-armed. They hide in asteroid fields. He sat down at his console, pulling up power readings. We'll need all shields at maximum. I can reroute extra power from the life support backup grid. Sierra nodded without hesitation. Do it. Commander Lysera already gave authorization. The mention of her name made Ethan's heart jump a little. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but a kind of alertness he couldn't help. He still remembered the look she gave him in the maintenance bay days ago, the strange softness in her tone. Since then, things had felt different, though she remained her calm, distant self. He tapped the panel fast, moving through data screens. If they're pirates, they'll target our engines first. We should set the auto turrets to defense pattern Delta. Already done, Sierra replied. You think like a soldier, he gave a half smile. Guess I've been around too many of them. A new voice came through the intercom, Commander Lysera's. Engineering report. Ethan hit the comm button. All systems stable, Commander. Shields at 98% and climbing. Reactor output steady. We're rerouting backup power. There was a pause. Then she said, Good. Stand by for possible impact. Her voice was calm, even as the alert tone grew louder. Ethan felt a strange calm, too, though his hands shook slightly as he kept typing. The vibrations of the engines deepened. Outside, he could imagine the massive ship gliding through the void, turning slowly toward danger. Minutes passed like hours. Then the first hit came. A deep tremor ran through the ship. The lights flickered and a few sparks flew from a wall console. Ethan grabbed the edge of his desk. Shields down to 74%. Sierra called. Reinforce them from auxiliary thrusters. Ethan shouted back. Another blast rocked the ship. This one's stronger. The noise of distant explosions echoed through the halls. Over the comms, voices reported damages, injuries, power failures. The Elthra's edge was under full attack now. Ethan's heart pounded. He could feel the heat from the reactors building up. Stabilizers are dropping, he said. If they keep this up, the main reactor could overload. Sierra turned toward him. We need to vent plasma from Section 5. That's outside the inner hull, Ethan said. We'll be exposed. Before she could answer, another explosion ripped through the ship. The shockwave threw Ethan against the wall. For a second, the world went blurry. When his vision cleared, the main console was smoking. Sierra was on the ground, dazed but alive. He pulled himself up, coughing. We need to get to Section 5, he said. Sierra nodded weakly. Go, I'll hold control here. He hesitated but then grabbed his toolkit and ran. The corridor was filled with flashing lights and the faint smell of burned metal. The ship groaned like a living thing, wounded and angry. He reached Section 5 just as another hit shook the hull. The automatic doors hissed shut, trapping him halfway inside. He pried them open manually and stepped through into the dimly lit maintenance bay. That's when he saw her. Commander Lysera stood near the plasma vent controls, her uniform slightly torn, a faint line of dark blue blood running down her arm. She turned sharply when she saw him. Cole, she said, why are you here? I came to vent the plasma manually, he said, catching his breath. The auto system's down. She studied him for a second, then nodded. Good. Help me with the override. They moved side by side to the control panel. The system was overloaded, the heat readings dangerously high. If the plasma pressure wasn't released soon, the ship could explode from within. Ethan worked fast, his fingers flying over the controls. Pressure's at 90% and rising. Lysera pulled out a manual lever. When I say pull this, he nodded. Got it. She glanced at him briefly. You should not be here. It's dangerous, he gave a quick grin. Yeah, well, that's kind of my specialty. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Then she shouted, now! He yanked the lever. The ship shuddered as bright blue plasma shot out through the vent lines, releasing the built-up energy. The temperature readings dropped fast. For a moment, he thought it had worked. Then the second explosion hit. The panel behind them blew apart, sending debris flying. Ethan turned instinctively, throwing himself between Lysera and the blast. Pain tore through his left arm as a piece of shrapnel cut deep. He fell to one knee, gasping. She caught him before he hit the ground. Cole! He looked up, half-dazed. Her face was close, her violet eyes glowing faintly. She pressed her hand against his bleeding arm, and the edges of the wound shimmered as she used some kind of healing field. You're hurt, she said quietly. I've had worse, he managed to say, trying to smile. She frowned, her elegant features tightening. You shielded me. Reflex, he said. Didn't have time to think. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Then she said softly, "You risked your life for me." He looked at her. "You're my commander. That's my job." Her eyes held his for a long moment. "Among my people," she said slowly. "To save another's life in battle creates a bond, a tie of fate. It is not a small thing," he frowned. "A bond?" She nodded once, still holding his arm. "Yes, a connection beyond commander duty." Ethan didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure if she meant it literally or just in her own cultural way. Either way, the way she said it made his chest feel strange. The lights flickered again. She looked up. "The pirates are retreating. Our ships have arrived." Ethan leaned back, exhausted. "Good, I was getting tired of being shot at." Lysra stood, helping him to his feet. "You will go to the infirmary." "I can still work," he said stubbornly, her tone turned firm. That was not a request, he gave a weak laugh. "Yes, Commander." She looked at him again, that same unreadable look she always had, but now there was something new in it. Something softer. She didn't say another word as she guided him down the corridor, her hand steadying his shoulder. The ship was quieter now, though damage reports came from every direction. Smoke drifted from some sections. Villaran medics moved quickly, their glowing eyes scanning the injured. When they reached the infirmary, Lysra handed him over to Dr. Miller, who looked both surprised and relieved. "What happened to you?" Miller asked. "Shrapnel," Ethan said. "Small one." Lysra stood beside the bed. "He shielded me during an explosion," she said, her tone even. Miller raised an eyebrow. "Of course he did." Ethan grinned weakly. "Just doing my part for intergalactic peace." Lysra's expression didn't change, but her eyes lingered on him longer than usual. Then she turned to leave. "Rest," she said quietly. "That is an order." When she was gone, Miller leaned closer. You know, for someone who barely talks, she sure looked worried. Ethan closed his eyes. I think that was her version of yelling. Over the next few days, Ethan stayed in the infirmary, his arm wrapped in a healing band. The ship returned to base for repairs. The crew was tired but alive. The story spread fast, how the human engineer had saved the commander during the attack. Some said it was luck. Others said it was something more. Ethan didn't pay much attention to the gossip. He just wanted to get back to work. But he did notice one thing. The commander didn't visit him once. Not during the first day or the second or the third. At first, he thought maybe she was just busy. Then he started to wonder if she was avoiding him again. He tried not to care, but part of him couldn't stop thinking about the look on her face when she healed him, the way her voice had softened. By the 5th day, he was cleared to return to duty. When he stepped onto the command deck again, everything was normal. Villarans at their posts, quiet voices, calm order, and Commander Lysra standing at the front, her posture perfect, her eyes on the stars. When she saw him, her expression didn't change. "Engineer Cole," she said evenly, "report to Section 3. Begin system recalibration." "Yes, Commander," he said. As he turned to go, she added softly, "You did well." He stopped for a moment, surprised. It was only 3 words, but from her it meant more than any medal. Then he nodded and went to his post, his chest tight with a feeling he couldn't quite name. He didn't know why she had ignored him for days after the battle. He didn't know what bond she had meant. But something had shifted between them. Something unseen, fragile and strange. And deep down he knew the silence between them would never be the same again.